I'm Major Garrett in Washington. We will continue to monitor this briefing at Reagan National Airport for any other developments that come from officials, but inferences can be drawn that this is a national catastrophe of shocking and staggering dimensions. There was no official reference to any dead from this collision, mid-air collision of a commercial jetliner, American Airlines, and a Army Black Hawk helicopter right near Reagan National Airport. However, as I said, inferences can be drawn. Roger Marshall, Republican senator from Kansas, made reference to many, many people dying, saying he is crushed and our country is crushed in spirit, making one reference to 60 or more lost. Again, that is not an official declaration. Recovery efforts continue on the Potomac River. You heard the local officials outlining the boats in the water, the divers trying to see if there is any rescue operation that can successfully find survivors of this crash. But the inferences, at least created by Senator Roger Marshall, suggest this is a devastating and deadly event here in the nation's capital. I want to bring in senior transportation correspondent Kris Van Cleave. Kris?
Major, we are hearing from sources at least 18 bodies had been recovered, no survivors. What was described to me as 3 debris fields in the water there, the Potomac River, meaning the airplane and the helicopter came down in the water, perhaps in pieces after this mid-air collision. The Canada Air regional jet, the CRJ 700, was a few hundred feet off the ground. It was very close to touching down at DCA. It was in the final steps of its final approach when this collision happened. It is possible, depending upon where the 2 aircraft struck, that the pilots of the airplane never even saw the helicopter coming.
Kris, help our audience understand how busy this atmosphere, this environment is for aircraft around Reagan National Airport. You have Joint Base Anacostia Bowling right across the Potomac and Anacostia River. It is a busy airspace, is it not?
It is. It is a busy airspace, and it is tightly controlled. I was just up in the D.C. police helicopter about a week and a half ago, and as we got even remotely close to Reagan, the pilot was talking to the Reagan Tower, the DCA Tower. We were flying at about 850 feet. We plunged aggressively down below 200 feet to make sure that the helicopter stayed well away from commercial traffic taking off from the airport. So, military aircraft, military helicopters operate in the D.C. area. That's not unusual. There is communication. It is a bit of a tightly choreographed dance, but certainly something went very, very wrong here. Something that hasn't gone wrong in the United States in 16 years. That's the last time there was a commercial airplane crash. The last time American Airlines experienced something like this was in November of 2001. We'd been in an unparalleled period of aviation safety in the United States, a period that ended tonight.
Kris Van Cleave, please stand by. I want to turn now to senior national security correspondent Charlie Daggett, who was at the scene. Charlie, what can you tell us?
Well, Major, you can probably hear those helicopters flying overhead. And a few minutes ago, we were asked to take the lights down low because some of the lights from the TV crews here were interfering with some of their night vision. And I can tell you there seems to be 2 or 3 different locations where most of these rescue attempts are taking place because just judging from the lights from the emergency vehicles. So that has been gathering throughout this evening. And helicopters, if anything, they've expanded their search. They were on the other side of the river, but in recent minutes, they've been sort of scanning this area with the spotlights open as well. Now, we've spoken to our sources at the Pentagon. According to U.S. Army, it was an Army UH-60 helicopter. That's a Black Hawk helicopter out of Fort Belvoir, Virginia. These were 3 soldiers. We're told no senior officers were on board. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth posting on X, this is absolutely tragic. Search and rescue efforts are underway. Prayers for all impacted souls and their families. Investigation launched and underway. And as you can hear, as I said, these helicopters flying overhead have expanded their search from across the river where we believe the the impact took place, and we may have three areas where they're searching, but the helicopters have been increasing their search to this side of the river.
Charlie, thank you very much for that. I want to turn now to CBS News transportation safety expert and analyst Robert Sumwalt. He is a former NTSB chair. So, Robert, based on what you have seen so far, and we have been running some of this grainy EarthCam video that appears to show the flight path of the commercial jet and the helicopter and the collision point, what kind of things do you see in that video? What kind of things can you communicate to our audience about what this might be about?
Well, I think the obvious, of course, is that this is, as others have said, this is certainly a tragedy, and our thoughts and prayers are with all of those who were affected by this tragedy. You know, it does appear, and I've looked at some of the radar data, and the airplane, the regional jet, was making a left turn to line up with runway 33. It was below 300 feet when all of a sudden the data from the radar feed just quit. So that tells us that this happened at a relatively low altitude. That's what we know right now.
And the pilots would have been cleared for final approach at that altitude, correct, Robert?
Absolutely. They would have already been making the turn to line up with that runway. They're focused on the runway. I was an airline pilot for 24 years. I've landed on that runway many times. You're in the turn. You're looking to line up with that runway. You're not looking out here for other traffic at that point. So yeah, I think that's really where their focus was. Now, the real question is, where was the focus of that helicopter crew?
Indeed. Robert, talk to our audience about the TCAS system, Traffic Collision Avoidance System. What is it? How should it operate under circumstances like this?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a very useful tool. It's been it came into being after the last major airline midair collision in the United States back in 1986. After that, TCAS became mandated around 1988. It is in all airline cockpits, and it will sound an alert and provide, if necessary, resolution advisories for the pilots to avoid each other. It's a very effective piece of equipment. However, below about 500 feet, that system, the aural alerting system, is inhibited so that we're not distracting the pilots at a critical flight phase. And as I mentioned earlier, we believe that this event happened below about 300 feet. So the alerting capability, the aural alerting capability, would have been inhibited in the regional jet.